Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the last session of the day, What Everyone Ought to Know About Sponsorships for Peer-to-Peer Fundraising, which is our last session in today's Peer-to-Peer World Virtual Conference. This conference is brought to you by 5 companies that serve nonprofits and that have come together to share their unique experience and knowledge with the sector. These companies are Accelerated Charity Growth, Cathexis Partners, Connected Nonprofit, Op3, and Turnkey. My name is Niti, and I'm Editor-in-Chief and Content Director for Nonprofit Pro, and I'm so happy to be introducing each session in today's conference. During each session, please feel free to submit the questions in the Q&A box in the Zoom window. The session speaker will answer questions toward the end of the session, and please note that this session will be recorded and made available online after today's virtual conference. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm not sure if everyone on this call has been on every conference so far today, or if you're just joining for the end of the day. But just want to say thank you so much for being here. Hopefully we can make the most of our time together. I'm going to try to keep my presentation to about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and then hopefully leave some time at the end as well for Q&A. So we are going to talk about my favorite topic, which is sponsorships and peer-to-peer fundraising. And so I feel like this is one of those things that I could probably go on and on about for about 4 hours, but I want to try to hone in on kind of the things that I think everyone on this call should know, and just have in the back of your minds. I don't think that everything that you're going to hear today is going to be something that's applicable right away. You may be in a different place in your journey regarding peer-to-peer fundraising. Maybe you're just considering starting something. Maybe you've got a really established program. And then on the flip side with the sponsorships, maybe it's something that you have a pretty strong sponsorship group, but you want to grow it somehow, or maybe you have no sponsors and you're just not sure how to get started. So I'm going to try to cover a pretty broad spectrum, and my hope is that out of all of the information that I'm going to share, that there are a few nuggets that you guys can take back that you want to share with your teams, with your steering committees, with your chapters if you have them, and some things that just stick with you as you are in the middle of your planning. Again, definitely use the Q&A section. I've got that box open on my computer. If there's some place you need me to slow down, explain anything, or if you think there's something interesting that you want me to share with the group, please feel free to add that in that area. As she mentioned, these are all of our sponsors. So just a quick thank you to everyone that helped make today possible, which it's always amazing to have a free resource. And I would encourage you guys, if you haven't yet, all of the other past conferences are all recorded as well. So if there's a topic or something that you're interested in, maybe take a look back in the archives, and you might see something there that catches your eye as well. You guys don't see me on video right now, so they wanted me to include a picture. So this is me, Rachel Collins, founder and CEO of ACG Incorporated. I started Accelerated Charity Growth in 2009, and I live in Austin, Texas. I'm actually speaking to you all today from Georgetown in DC at a conference here, and so I'm glad you're all with me. So a couple of quick things that I just wanted to make sure that everyone has a quick understanding of. Why would a company get involved with you in your peer-to-peer program as a sponsor? Sometimes there are a few things that maybe we leave out or we don't think about, and I just wanted to make sure that these things were top of mind. It hopefully will help with the selling proposition and the value proposition, and also these are things that I would just encourage you guys at different times to be reaching out for different reasons. You never know which one or mix of these is going to be most appealing. So obviously some of the normal ones, the employee engagement, they just want to have fun, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute. There are some leadership opportunities, whether it's for their junior execs or for maybe some of their department heads. So this is a way for them to get more involved in the community, to gain some more leadership skills. Then also the community building, both for their community as well as your organization, as well as the location that you're representing, whether it's a statewide peer-to-peer program, national, or even a local event. It is something that allows the sponsors to support a local cause or issue, because there is that moment where that peer-to-peer program is taking place. A lot of sponsors also get involved because of the cause itself. Also, the opportunity to reach out to your volunteers. You'll see employee engagement at the top, which is on their side of providing employees and getting them active. But then on the flip side, one of the assets that we have to offer up to our sponsors is outreach and connection with our volunteers, our most loyal supporters. There's a networking opportunity. I've actually sold some sponsorships just because I knew a company in town wanted to pitch and sell another organization that was a sponsor of mine. So sadly, they didn't really know much about us. They weren't extremely involved, but they wanted to be at the right place at the right time, and that was something that I could offer. And then also from a branding perspective, either connecting to your brand or looking at ways to elevate their brand somehow. And then the public relations, which we're also going to talk a little bit about, which I think is something that gets overlooked in the sponsorship realm. And then employee recruitment. A lot of organizations, I've been able to sell into a couple of sponsors just because they actually want to recruit from the population of folks that are coming to our events and participating. So the more you know about your audience, the more you're able to connect that to some various sponsor prospects. I think the timeline of a peer-to-peer program, and this is where I would say distinguishes it from just a normal event sponsorship, a concert or some of the other activities that are out there. A peer-to-peer program has such an extended timeline. You have the opportunity to talk to this audience for a very long time, and both pre and post event. And so I think something about that is also interesting to sponsors, that it's not just a quick hit, but it's actually something that they can plan out. It's a campaign they can plug into when it makes sense for them. And there are countless other benefits as well. And sometimes I just have to stop and ask the potential sponsors or our existing sponsors, why do you sponsor us? Why are you involved in this peer-to-peer program? What is it for you that brings the most value? And I'm always surprised when they throw something out that I hadn't really thought about before, but it does continue to help me to refine my messaging and the work that I'm doing. So the first thing that I want to talk about when we're talking about things you should know, and I have a friend that actually says you should never should on yourself. So I don't want to go through this whole presentation with the idea that you should do this and you should do that. That's really not the intention. The intention is to give you all the tools and information and then allow you to decide what you want to take and implement, and what are some things that are good to know but we're not there yet, or we've tried that and we're moving on. So definitely take all of these things. There's not one sponsorship and peer-to-peer program that is like the other. So I would encourage you to take what you like out of this and ditch the rest. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we started with was retention. You can say, I thought it was so important that I actually said it 3 times. Retention, retention, retention. And what I want to talk about are, what are some of the things that you can do in order to retain some of your existing sponsors? Obviously, they are a lot easier and cheaper for you to keep than having to go out and find new sponsors. So this is a great place to start. It's also so much easier to walk into some of those new prospect meetings when you can say, these are all the partners that are with us already this year, and these are the partners that have been with us for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So starting every year when you're getting ready for your peer-to-peer program with your past sponsors and thinking through a strategy for them, reaching out to them and solidifying their efforts. I usually do this actually on site at the event. So I will be next to the sponsor or a contact there, and I will make sure that while we're standing there, this is so exciting. Are you having a good time? Has this been a good relationship? Can we count on you for next year? Can you imagine missing this? So I'll make sure that I say a few statements to basically get a verbal commit at the event, and then that is so much easier to follow up on post-event. So then it's a matter of just emailing them a week later and saying, I have your sponsorship report, I have your thank you gift. I'd love to go ahead and get started on next year's program. You mentioned XYZ, whatever they said when they were standing next to me. Let's get started. time's wasting, right? The other thing that I would say is retention starts immediately after you've sold them the first time. So anytime they have signed an agreement, they've agreed to something new, I always have kickoff meetings. That's, again, another opportunity where I've actually been able to upsell in those kickoff meetings, and not just upsell from getting more cash from a sponsorship, but that's where a cause marketing deal gets involved, or I'm able to get them to agree to having a team, because now they're already invested. They've made some type of agreement or commitment to the organization and to the program. And so I'll immediately gather up a few people from my team. Maybe it's someone on programs, maybe someone from marketing, maybe even our executive director, and bring everybody to a kickoff meeting. And then they'll see kind of who I'm bringing, and they do the same. They bring a variety of people from a variety of different departments. And there's a question about what's included in the sponsorship report. So I will get to that in a little bit, and also try to provide you with a really convenient way to track that as you're going as well. So it's not a super cumbersome thing that you're having to do 3 days after an event. So the other thing that I would encourage you guys to do, aside from the kickoff meeting, is really building out your stewardship strategy based on their calendar and milestones, not your calendar and milestones. So what that means is when you have your kickoff meetings, one of the first things that I will ask them is, can you give me all of the most important dates on your calendar? If that's investor calls and meetings, if that is board meetings, if it's staff activities, if it's a big sales or product launch that they have coming up before the peer-to-peer program, I'll kind of find out what is going on in their lives. Are they going on vacation? Is there anything else that we need to know about? And then I'll build my outreach plan based on their activities. The next thing that I wanted to talk about on the retention piece is a benefits chart. I don't know how many of you all are using a benefits chart right now, but it's a really great tool. It's simply an Excel document. I'm sure there are more complicated ways to do it, but I have always used Excel. And basically what it is I go through the organization, both the peer-to-peer program as well as everything else everything. I'm not sure where the recording is. I believe it's on the Peer-to-Peer World website. Someone just asked that question. So if you go to the Peer-to-Peer World website, you should be able to access all of the recordings today as well as past. So the benefits chart is very simply a list of every asset you have, every piece of collateral, every website, every press release, merchandise, on-site signage opportunities, lead-in, kickoff events, anything else that you are doing. And then simply when you sell a sponsor, I go and take the sponsorship agreement, and then I open up my benefits chart, I add their name, and then I simply go through my list of benefits and mark down exactly what they should receive. If it's a logo on a poster, it's a name on a t-shirt, it's 10 tickets, it's 5 registrations. And then I do that for all of our partners, and they're all across the board on one Excel spreadsheet. I include, in some cases, I'll actually use a benefits chart, just not with my sponsors for that peer-to-peer program, but I actually use it across the board for the whole organization year round. And then I specifically have a highlighted section for the peer-to-peer assets. But what I do with that is, as soon as someone signs on, I will send out that benefits chart to everyone in the organization on my side. And that way, anybody in the marketing department or in administration or our board liaison or anyone in the development department or even on our events team, our event contractors, the folks that are putting tents up, or our production team. And that way, everyone knows exactly what needs to be delivered to each one of those partners. So there's no confusion, and I'm not all of a sudden seeing a piece of collateral with no logo on it for a sponsor and then freaking out trying to figure out how am I going to put stickers on all of these 10,000 brochures. You all might be laughing right now. I can't tell you're on mute, but I have actually done that. I have had to print stickers and then go back through, and because we at the time didn't have the money to do all of that. So the benefits chart is just a way to keep everybody on the same page. The other nice thing about the benefits chart is a nice way at the end of the peer-to-peer program for you to really also assess what benefits you're giving your sponsors for the peer-to-peer program, and is it all relative to one another? If all of a sudden you see, I struck a deal with somebody for 25 grand and I gave them too much compared to our presenting $100,000 sponsor, you can kind of see that quickly in that benefits chart, the way it's laid out. So I would really encourage you guys to implement that. And at the very end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a link to a sponsorship lab that I built, and there's a 7-day free trial. So you can go on all of the templates, sponsorship report, benefits chart, kickoff meeting agenda. A lot of this, there are templates there. You are free to just sign up for the 7 days, download everything you want if that's of interest. So definitely check that out if you guys aren't already using something like this. The other thing with the benefits chart is, as those benefits are delivered, as the brochure is designed, as the t-shirt artwork is done, as we put out a press release, or there's a picture of signage on site at the event, I will actually upload all of those into a Dropbox file and then include the link on that benefits chart. So as the year goes by, as the program gets closer to completion, you'll start to see the 2 tickets is actually replaced with a copy of the tickets and the email that I had sent to them. The program logo comment is actually an image of the program cover with their logo on it. So then when you get to that moment where you need to put together a sponsorship report, which for me is really just, here's proof that I delivered everything to you that I said I was going to. So you can do that in a Word document. I've done photo books. And literally 24 years ago, I think I did an actual photo album where I printed pictures at a photo lab and then on 35 millimeter film, and then put them all in photo albums and delivered that. So obviously times have changed, and now you could do something really fun with a PowerPoint deck. So there's some really fun ways to present all of that, but all you're really trying to do is say, trust but verify. You trust that I was going to give you all of these benefits and results, and here's everything that I said I was going to give you. And then that also is a nice piece of collateral that they can take back to the rest of their corporation or their company. I've also had folks put that out if they have a waiting room, put it out on their front tables. So it really is a nice piece of material for them to have for years to come. And then the post-event follow-up, again, with the retention effort, one of the things that you can look at that are super cheap to do is, if you have a poster, have all of your steering committee members sign it and then frame it and put thank you, a thank you message on the matting, and get that over to the sponsor. We, back in the day, have even done things where, like with Andy Roddick, he wore a certain shirt to the US Open, so then we could take the shirt and we actually cut it into little pieces and then put it inside an acrylic paperweight, and then we were able to give everybody a post-event follow-up and a sponsor thank you that was really unique. So it does not have to be expensive, but really it gives you an excuse to sit down with someone because you have something tangible that you can then give them, and that puts you face-to-face with them, so you can start, again, talk about the sponsorship report, talk about the event, and get them to sign on for the next year. The next part that I wanted to focus on was who you're going to call. And I have to say, this is actually the first time that I've used an iPhone icon instead of the old school phone icon. So I don't know why, but that made me happy today. So when you say who you're going to call, what I'm talking about is the lead generation and prospecting. So we've already knocked out everybody that's been here before. That's awesome. We've upsold them. They're doing more with us. They're more active. That's great. Now let's go find some new folks for our peer-to-peer program. This comes around to lead generation and prospecting. So the question that I get asked a lot is this idea of, do we need to go broad or deep? And the idea there being, do we go broad by, we need to have 1,500 prospects or leads? I would say leads in your listing of who you're going to go after. So that's where you start doing things like, okay, I want to see the list for the Chamber of Commerce. I want to download our economic development website list, and every company in this city or the state or what have you is interested and has more than 10 employees. So you're really just a broad cut across everything, just trying to come up with the most massive leads list that you can. The other option and another way to come at it, and it just really depends on your sponsorship goals and how much you need to sell, and if you're trying to sell lower dollar and a higher volume, or if you really are going for that one lead sponsor prospect. But you can also go deep, which means don't worry about what the rest of the world is doing. Really start immediately with your connections through LinkedIn and your database. I'm sure some of you guys have heard, like with your database, if you can pull a report and just look at the email address appends in your list, you might see there's 100 people in your peer-to-peer database that have the at Dell.com email address. That is someone then that should go on your prospect list, and you could actually use those folks in your database to help you do your research and also make some connections there. The other thing that I have been kind of surprised about is, as fundraising professionals, one of the things that I would definitely suggest in the sponsorship world is get on LinkedIn, love it, be excited about it. Make sure you are connected with every one of your board members, advisors, event steering committee members, all of your existing sponsors. So back to that note of retention, all of your existing staff at your organization. And I also connect with all of the prospects, because I kind of want to see what are they doing, what news are they caring about, what are top of mind for them, what industry magazines or periodicals are they looking at. So looking at LinkedIn and your database and sources like that can be extremely helpful in regards to a more in-depth list, where you might not get as many prospects. You may only get 20 or 50 from that type of a research project, but that might be the right approach, again, depending on what you're selling and where you're starting in the process. So don't feel like you have to get overwhelmed with a big list. The other thing that I would throw out that's been really helpful for me in not just peer-to-peer program sponsorship sales, but just generally for corporate relations, is the research. I do an extensive online research. I'll look at everything from Yahoo Finance. I look at their website. I'll look at their competitors' websites. I try to look up Hoover's and Dun & Bradstreet. And I will spend some time taking a look at all of these opportunities or these places where we may have some data to see where they're at and is it a good time to be asking. And then separately, I will try to find anyone I know that is currently at that company or that has been at that company, and I will ask if I can spend 30 minutes on the phone with them or even take them to coffee if we're in the same city. And I will just ask questions. When you working there, can you tell me about any charity programs that you all did? What other type of events and peer-to-peer programs did you participate in? How did they promote them? Who handled it? And I will do all of that digging to the point where it could be really simply a salesperson, say at a Verizon retail store, even if I'm about to go talk to Verizon corporate. So no matter what level someone is at, don't be afraid to really do that. I think it also is exciting for the sponsor prospect when they know that you've invested some time and energy in getting to know their people and doing a little digging on your side. Someone asked about where the resources are available. So there's a website called charityrevenuelab.com. And again, I'll have the link in this deck, and I think that'll be available on the website. And you guys can download all of I even have a diagram of how your first meeting should be set up in there from a seating standpoint. So take a look at it, and hopefully those resources are helpful. The other thing that I would throw out when you're talking about lead generation and prospecting is you need to figure out how are you going to decide who your best prospects are. So is it because of the number of employees they have? Is it their past involvement in this cause? Is it because they tend to overlap with the region and the space that this peer-to-peer program is, reaching? So decide what your selection criteria is, and then that allows you to go through whether your list is 25 names or 500 names. You or an intern or anyone can really go through, because you've verbalized and you've documented your selection criteria, how to prioritize. Is this a low, medium, or high opportunity for me? One of my biggest concerns, I guess you would say, is when I see someone pull out their prospect list and they hand it to me, and it's literally companies listed alphabetically, A to Z. If your prospect list is still sorted alphabetically, please take a few minutes. It really does not have to be super in depth. I mean, you could spend months on it, obviously, but you could also spend a lunch hour on this. Take out your list and just mark high, medium, low, and then resort and make sure, because you never know, like Zappos may be your number one prospect and you may never get to them because you only have a limited amount of time to make these sponsorship calls. So definitely check that out. The other thing that I wanted to mention is just what are the steps of the actual sponsorship process that we go through. So obviously, figuring out your leads, which is that larger list. And then once you find out who are your high and maybe even your medium prospects, then they become your prospects. So I hope that makes sense. So it's just like the funnel. You're going to have a large number of leads, but not all of those leads are going to be good ones. So then you're going to find which are the good leads. Those become your prospects. And then at that point, I boil down to individual prospect strategies, so that I have a very specific strategy. Like I said, I'll look up, do I know somebody at that company? Have I ever worked with them before at another organization? Have I started following them on social media? And at that point, I'm ready to make my initial contact and approach them. And then at that point also, the first thing I'm asking for is a meeting, whether that's a 30-minute meeting or an hour. Ideally, it's always in person, but if we have to, especially with just the distance, and especially with some of these peer-to-peer programs, and you may be talking to someone at a corporate office and it doesn't make sense for you to fly out for every intro meeting. So I'll use Zoom or some other video conferencing service, and then I'll have a meeting with them. I basically have implemented a plan to use almost like an investment or venture capital pitch deck. So I try to limit it to 6 slides about our program. And then from there, I only go through that in about 15 to 20 minutes. And then I spend the rest of the time going through a list of questions that I have already created based on my research and based on the conversations that I've had so far with anyone that knows that company. And at that point, I'm just trying to get all of the inside scoop. And you'd be surprised how open and honest. People love to talk about themselves. That includes their company. And even to the extent where I'll say, what is your favorite peer-to-peer program you've ever been a part of, either as a volunteer, a participant, or as a corporate partner? Tell me about it. What'd you like? What did you not like? I'll ask them to tell me what are their strategic priorities as a company. What are your personal action goals and priorities, and what are you being held accountable to? What metrics do you report on? So I'll go through a list of questions, and really from there, then I typically will, let them ask questions as well, but I'll say, it sounds like you might be most interested in these 3 sponsorship opportunities within our program. I'd love to put something together for you to consider, and then we can talk again. Because really, it's my job to know my organization and to understand where the leverage points are for the partner. It's not their job to know everything and then for them to filter. That's my job. So I want to be their filtering resource. So at that point, I learned this actually, if you all were on the call before this with Mandy O'Neill, she is fantastic at this. So I've implemented it in my sales process for sponsorships, which is once I've created that proposal for a partner, I will again use a video conferencing. I will pull up the actual proposal with them, and I will say, let's edit this together. So we will then spend some time going through the deck together, and I will get feedback from them, ask some questions at each slide, at each opportunity, in the benefits, and basically get them to kind of co-write or co-author the actual presentation. Because at that point, I'm actually editing it on the screen in real time, and then as soon as the conversation is over, it's been updated, I can PDF it, I send it to them, and then there's really it makes it a little harder for them to say no, because at that point, they've actually written it with me. So if they say no, then we kind of have to go back and say, okay, well, let's edit it again. So that's a step in the process that's been really helpful and has gotten us to a much higher close rate. So, so once we do that, like I said, we reviewed that together and we submit the final. And then at that point, we send the agreement and an invoice, as well as, again, schedule that kickoff meeting and determine who should be there, and what all we want to cover, and if there's anything specific on their list. Some of this can change, and some of this I'll say, I'm talking about it as if it happens in a 5-minute time span. It could take a year. So these are the steps in the process. It depends on the partner and how fast they want to move as to how fast you can go through these steps. So definitely think about those moments and kind of the right timing. Ted asked the question of what are the goals of the kickoff meeting? The goal of the kickoff meeting is, one, to review with a larger group aside from your immediate contact at the organization what all needs to happen, have a clear understanding of the mission and the goals and the peer-to-peer program that you're working with, so that more people at the company understand the benefits and why this is important and why the company signed on. It's also an opportunity, if they're going to have a team to participate, you identify the team captain. You can start to give them some of the resources, let them know that you're there to support them in their efforts. If they want to do some type of company-wide challenge and they have multiple locations, this is where you can start talking about how and when do we start to integrate that? What's the right timing for the campaign? What are you all going to do versus what you want us to do? So I'll cover just about anything in that kickoff meeting so that the rest of the year and my project calendar for the peer-to-peer program can go really smoothly. Someone asked another question about, with so many corporate sponsors moving to online submissions, and very specific areas for their support, what is the recommendation for prospecting? So I would actually add that category to my selection criteria. So if I know that I want someone interested, say, in sarcoma or in research and science, then that will become part of my selection criteria. So if I don't see anything that is relevant to me, I'm not going to go after it. That one thing that I will tell everyone here that is a huge tool for me, taking a step back in regards to the prospecting list. I know maybe this has never happened to everyone on this call, but there's usually a really well-intentioned board member, staff member, volunteer that says, why haven't you gotten Walmart yet? Why haven't you called, HEB, or name the business? But I know for a fact that they don't sponsor anything in this space, or they don't sponsor events, they only do capital campaigns, or whatever the reason may be. So when I create that selection criteria and I'm able to prioritize my high, medium, lows, that becomes a really valuable time saver when it comes to board reporting, speaking with your executive director, sharing the information with the rest of your staff, because then you can clearly say, when they bring up Walmart for the 9 millionth time, I've actually researched Walmart and here's why they're a low prospect for me, but look at the highs that I have, and these are the ones that I'm spending my time on. So by documenting that process and having that list, you can help educate everybody else. And then sometimes what I've found is then they will start giving me better quality leads, because they have an understanding of who I'm really looking for and who we have the best chance to close. So if they're not in my area, then obviously they go low on the list. And with online grant submissions, I don't mind online grant submissions, but I'm still always trying to connect with them in some way. And it may feel even very one way. It may be simply that I am tagging their company in a few Twitter or other social media posts. It may be that I'm liking and sharing an article that their director of marketing posted on LinkedIn. I may, and now I'm going to be a little bit more stalkery, I may show up if I know that a lot of their executives belong to a certain networking group in town, I'll make it a point to make sure that I attend a happy hour that month or the business luncheon that month because I know they might be there. So even if the application needs to be submitted online, that doesn't mean that you don't still have some way to connect, even if it's, like I said, digitally, connect with them. So hopefully that answers your question. So the next one that I wanted to throw out for sponsorships for peer-to-peer is just this idea of, are you ready? And the need to say, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I've got my list of prospects. I've retained my past sponsors. They're all on board. I'm excited. If you get out there and you start talking to people, I've had a situation where we start selling and then someone says, this sounds great, sign me up. And then I actually have to spend 3 weeks getting our legal counsel from our board who's donating their time and the rest of it involved in documenting the template agreement and the invoicing process and that kind of thing. So you want to be ready for any step in this process so that you have all this stuff kind of in your toolbox so that you feel like I've got it. Now, does that mean that you need to wait to make any of these calls until everything's beautiful and has a nice little ribbon tied around it? Absolutely not. But it does mean these things should be in progress so that you're in no way ever slowing down a deal. So some things like your asset inventory, you don't want to get into a meeting. You don't want to have a lot of conversations if you don't even know what you have to sell. So be clear about what you have and know all about it. Who owns it? You know, how many brochures do we print? Where do these brochures go? All of that kind of information is going to be super helpful when you're in these conversations and you're trying to put together the right deal for a sponsor. Know your benefits chart, have some case studies if available for other sponsors. They don't love these, but what you can do is send them to them with a note saying, this is relevant to you because I think we could do XYZ, which is similar, and it just gives you some trust and proof points. Have your research ready. And that's really meant to be research on your organization. I had a sponsor years ago. We put some really good information in our sponsorship deck. We had a great conversation. And at the end of it, they basically said, you haven't told me anything that I didn't already know about your organization or this audience, and that I couldn't have found on the internet. So what information or insights can you share with a sponsor that that they can't find anywhere else? So as an example, I had a sponsorship of a golf tournament, not always my favorite, but they happen. And I actually went through the parking lot and counted up the types of cars that were in the parking lot. So I knew how many Cadillacs, how many Lexuses, how many Mercedes. And so that way, when I went to the car dealers to pitch the sponsorship, they had no way of knowing that. That's not going to be on any website. That's not going to be on the internet anywhere, or in any of our collateral material. That's something that only I, as the sponsorship professional at the organization, knew. So you want to try to find those key pieces of information and kind of nuggets that you can share, because then they see you as a valuable marketing partner. Know your key messaging. Make sure that you're always speaking from a right place and that you're not misspeaking about the organization. And also be ready with media outreach. That means things like a media alert, and we'll talk in a second about that. Media alerts to announce new partners, and other outreach that you can do. So if there's anything that any way that you can get them some more publicity and get some information out there, have those templates ready so that you know your boilerplate and the rest of it, so you can talk. And that's another thing that you can do in the kickoff meeting is actually get a quote from them to include in your media release about why they've joined you as a sponsor. So that's another topic for the kickoff meeting. So the pitch deck, like I said, I try to keep it to 6 slides. And what I will do with that is I will build it. I'll take it to a few of our existing sponsors as well as some prospects. And I have them pick it apart. Tell me why you like it. Tell me why you hate it. What information am I missing? So that really is a collaborative effort to build out our proposal deck. I don't just build it in a vacuum and then hope and pray that it's going to make me some money. I actually take it out and say, can you can you spend 15, 20 minutes over coffee and just take a look at this thing and see if you'd even respond to it? I also build out a sample proposal deck so that that's ready to go, so that when I know more about the company and I can build that out, I just have to kind of plug in, here's where I think they're going to sponsor. And then, like I said, the agreement template and the invoice, and then the kickoff agenda. So those are some things that you can have ready. The other piece that I would talk about, that I wanted to mention to you guys, is just the idea of leveling up, and this idea of just having levels, but knowing that those things you'll see on the second bullet, that's really meant to be a guidance tool and not a menu. So I've really tried over the last decade or so to get away from this. I know it sounds easy to be like, are you $1,000, $5,000, or $10,000 sponsor? Diamond, platinum, bronze, whatever. But really what I've tried to move more towards is what level of commitment. So I'll actually say up to a dollar amount, or I'll give a range of, these are the types of benefits that are exclusive for this group. These are the types of benefits that are exclusive to that group. But if you use the process that I mentioned before, where you're just giving them an overview of your peer-to-peer program in your organization, and you're asking questions, you may never need to show them true levels like we've done in the past, and that used to be super popular, because at that point, every sponsorship agreement is custom. Everything is a little bit different because it's really curated among all of the different benefits for that specific partner. Obviously, you always want to be mentioning any opportunities that an organization has to sponsor at both a local, regional, or national effort. I know there's always some, push and pull here about, well, I'm local, I don't want my national office to take my sponsor, or a national office saying, I don't know how to sell into some of these companies that are sponsoring locally. But what I would say is, this is a time when we set kind of our goals and our egos aside and really start thinking about what is in the best interest of the sponsor. If it makes the most sense for them to understand that there is a roadmap or a path for them to sponsor something, a peer-to-peer program that's on a national level, even if that means multiple chapters or even partnering with the national organization, my first goal is always to say, what is most applicable to them? If it's a local company, they have no national presence, I'm not going to worry about telling them about our national program and all the details and what's available. But if it is a national company or even a regional organization, I absolutely want to make them aware of the opportunities. Now, whether they say yes or not is still up to them, but I want to make sure that they feel like I am their channel to information and I'm never keeping anything separate. The other thing from a level standpoint is making sure that you're offering opportunities for them to fund this sponsorship through both cash, in-kind, participation in teams, leadership volunteering, as well as marketing support. And what I would also say with cash is that doesn't always have to be cash out of their immediate budget. It's actually, I just was listening to Joe Waters' talk from Selfish Giving, and he kind of reiterated again, if you can get a sponsor for $5,000, that's great. If you can get a sponsor to say, we're going to run a cause marketing program and have a minimum guarantee of $5,000, chances are you're going to raise a lot more money with that cause marketing program in the stores than you are with their flat $5,000. So when you're thinking about cash, always be offering up the opportunity to say, are you interested in creating a program for your employees or your clients or customers to get involved in the sponsorship of this event or this program instead of just the cash outright. The other thing I wanted to talk briefly about is shout it from the rooftops. I think sometimes we get a sponsor, we check that box, and then we're off trying to sell the next thing, or in most cases with most organizations, you're off trying to write your annual appeal and you're off trying to report to the board and you're talking to a major donor. So one thing I would just encourage everybody to do is make sure that you're not keeping their sponsorship a secret. Thank them to their face online, send them something to say thank you. And then also at every opportunity that you have. If you have public speaking opportunities at a local Rotary, or if you're doing a kickoff event for your peer-to-peer program, make sure that you're mentioning them. Wear their t-shirt. I joke that, make it like NASCAR and take 15 hats with the different brands of all your sponsors and put the hats on at different times, or have on, so just make sure that they feel like you are a brand ambassador for them, and always looking for opportunities to help them accomplish the business goals that they shared with you in that initial orientation meeting. Include some media outreach and announcements. I'm surprised at how many organizations, when they get a new sponsor, do not send out any kind of media or press announcement. And more importantly, it's not just important to send it out just generally, but also in that kickoff meeting, you can ask them, what are the different industry publications and websites and associations that you care about? Or where, what channels do you guys advertise on that are most important to you? Because that is the place where you want to make a special effort to say, Consumer Packaged Goods Association, and you send them an announcement and it makes it onto their website or in their publications. So again, remember that you're on their team now because they have made a commitment to you. So how can you help? The other thing that I would say is signage at offices. So if there, and this can be even as silly as in your own small development office, or even in your check-in desk at your organization, if you can print out their logo, buy a frame at IKEA and stick those on the wall and say proud sponsor of, if they ever come into your space, they immediately again see that front and center, you're recognizing them. And then offer to do the same. Ask them, do you guys have any place where we can be recognized and the sponsorship can be talked about? If that's on some kind of closed network television program or screens in their waiting rooms or those kinds of things. So talk about how can we both make sure that we're talking really loud about this sponsorship. The other thing that seems like a really silly thing, but something that I have had so many sponsors tell me that they've kept them over the years are badges. So even if we have no real access issues or private areas or VIP tents at our event, I still make badges for sponsors. So I will, print out our poster artwork and then just at the bottom add a tag that says sponsor. I will take their headshot and put it on there and say, proud sponsor of, and then our event logo. So, and it can just be, if you don't order in mass, it can be a simple black lanyard that you order on Amazon. But it seems so silly, but I have sponsors from years that when I go into their offices, they still have every one of those lanyards hanging off their door handle in their office. And everybody else they work with sees that as well. It just makes them feel special, which is really the goal. So on that note, we want to make sure that we always let our sponsorship folks know that they are a star, that they're amazing. And we not only want them to feel it, but we more so want to make sure that everyone in their organization knows it. So we want to make sure that our person looks like a megastar at their organization. That may mean if you know that they're under 40, nominate them for the 40 under 40 award that happens in your city. See if in their industry publications, associations they belong to, is there a way for you to recognize them somehow and submit some applications? Even if they don't win, the fact that you nominated them and they'll get a notice on that is a win for you. It just, again, lets them know, not only am I invested in your company, but I'm personally invested in you, because you guys have all heard the old adage, people buy from people, not companies. So you really need to start thinking about, how do I make sure that this person knows that I care about them and I want them to be successful? Again, media outreach, both traditional channels as well as social media. Make them feel like you're on their team. If you're out at a competitor and you see something, take a picture and send it to them and say, have you guys seen this campaign? Thought you'd want to make sure you were on it or take a look at it. Or if you see something in another industry and you're like, I saw this and thought it might be interesting. If they know that you're just thinking about them constantly, they're going to be really interested in keeping you on board and keeping the sponsorship with your program. Also offering up, when it makes sense, any kind of leadership positions, either just for the peer-to-peer program, so maybe it's an advisory committee, maybe it's the board, a steering committee, or generally for the organization, board, advisory groups, even just task force. We have a specific problem we need to address. We're working on our messaging. Would you participate in that conversation? Just get them more integrated into who you are. And the last thing that I wanted to talk really briefly about was just making it fun. I think sometimes for us, like we think, okay, it's a job, we've got a checklist, I've got a project timeline, I've got reporting to do. But in a lot of cases, these companies, and especially the people that we're selling to, they are doing this partially because they need to integrate some kind of fun into their day-to-day lives at those companies. And so if we can be that lead in to when every time you show up, you've got a smile on your face, you have fun ideas, you are just cheerful and excited, and representing your organization, they're looking for that. You can be a bright light in what might be a really hard struggle time for them. So just keep in mind that these peer-to-peer programs really might be the most fun they have all year, and something that they're looking forward to. Make sure that the other thing is that your passion can be very contagious. So if you're energized, then they're looking for that. They're excited then to speak with you. Tell stories, and I think sometimes depending on the organizations, in some situations I've seen folks focus on the sad stories instead of just the fun ones. So thinking about your peer-to-peer program, if you can tell a story about this is the third generation that's coming to this event and it's so fun to have watched their kids grow up. It's little things like that, little nuggets and things that they can then turn around and pass along at the water cooler to all of their friends and coworkers and say, oh my gosh, did you realize XYZ? So those stories, sometimes, you want to mix in the mission and you want to mix in the needs and why your cause is so important. But that doesn't need to be every time you talk to them. Also, just that it's very inclusive. Again, engage them in what you've got going on. Offer up if they want to engage anybody else at their organization, and make sure they feel like this is something for everybody. And then really get creative too on the fun side. So we had a run event that was coming up. So we at a company, hosted a small mini run where everybody kind of did a lap around the building, and then we timed everyone and then added up all the departments' times, and then a department won. So then they got special privileges at the actual event. So there are some ways for you to add some pre-event company challenges, team weeks, and the rest of it so that you can get them excited and make sure that they have fun through all of this. Because if it's not fun for them, they may not sign on next year. I mentioned the additional resources that I wanted to highlight for you guys. So 2 things. The first one on the left is Banding Together for a Cause. It's a book that I wrote about the Livestrong wristband experience and really what that entire process looked like. How did we steward and cultivate the Nike relationship up into the wristband campaign? And I will tell you, the Nike relationship, the first year I was at Livestrong, or it was Lance Armstrong Foundation at the time, they gave us 100 watches. That's all I could get out of them, was 100 watches for our top peer-to-peer fundraisers. Anyone that raised over $5,000 at the time, that was what we had. So we gave them a watch. So going from and doing all the strategies that I just talked about with you about promotion and integration and fun and all of those focus areas, that really led to them having insights into our organization and our community that led to the launch of the wristband campaign. So don't undersell or don't cut short some of your sponsors that you kind of think, oh, they're not giving us much. That might be a really big partner for you in the future. So anyway, I outline everything in that book. And then, as I mentioned, Charity Growth Lab, there is a free trial for 7 days, and then it's just a monthly subscription fee. And I do video segments on 5 different modules. So a lot of the stuff that we just talked about, I just go more in depth and then also provide the materials. So when I say sponsorship report, there's a template. When I say kickoff meeting, there's a template. So it's something that you guys might want to take a look at if you want to get any more in depth on any one of these topics or all of them in general. There was a question, and so I'm going to open it up right now for questions. We have about 5-10 minutes for questions. What's the general timeline for sponsor outreach leading up to the event? 3 months, 6 months from the start or first activation? I usually say 12 months. So if we have an established event, we know it's happening annually, I immediately reach out within a couple of weeks, mostly because there's so much energy and excitement and buzz still happening from the last event that I need to capture that. I need to close the deal. I need to get them signed on for the next year. And if it's a new prospect, they're seeing all of that buzz in the media or online and social media. So I will purposefully kind of try to share as much as I can, even with prospects that I'm going to be reaching out to in the next month or so, so that it's just top of mind for them. There's really no time to stop selling. It's just a matter of what assets you have available at given moments. So when you build out that benefits chart, one of the things that you're going to be tracking is at what point does this no longer become relevant? They can't be on the poster, they can't be on the t-shirt, they can't be on the brochure, but where could I put them? So if I have a sponsor that calls me 2 weeks before the event, which I've had happen, I will still say, okay, you missed all of this. We'll make sure you get it next year, but here's what I can offer you today. So I'll definitely start 12 months out and have a strategy, like I said, focused on retention and then working my way through the top prospects. And then I will try to do some build up to say, I know 6 months out from the event, I want to make sure that they have our registration kickoff or launch date or website launch date on their calendar. So I'll share something with them then. I'll talk 3 months out. I'll get more logistics heavy with here's parking maps, here's your team information if you haven't already had everybody sign up, and those types of activities. So it's really a year-round process. And then you also mentioned you operate based on when the prospect's annual budgeting happens. I will always reach out at any time, but again, in that informational meeting, that first orientation, I will ask them, when do you make these decisions? When do you start reviewing and looking at these opportunities? And then when do you make decisions? And then I will find out from them, is there an opportunity still to submit something? Do I need to start planning for next year? And then that simply tells me where they need to fit on my prospect list. Maybe they go to medium or low for this year because they're not going to happen, but they're still flagged for high for the following year, so that I can build it around that. But mostly I try to operate on their calendar, not mine, which can get tricky depending on when your event and when your calendar is financially. But again, it's all about them and us adjusting to them instead of them adjusting to us. Are there any other questions or anything that I have mentioned that you guys would like me to go over in a little bit more detail? Okay. I don't see anything else. So with that, I will put up, this is my phone number and that's my cell number and my email address. So feel free to text, call, email. I always extend the offer. If you have a presentation deck or a proposal, or just want to talk about a specific prospect that you've been trying to get but can't seem to close, please reach out. I'm more than happy to jump on a phone call with anyone, even if it's just for 15 minutes to an hour, and give you some feedback and insight and talk through it and brainstorm. Because sometimes it can be lonely being sometimes the only sponsorship person for an organization. And so I'm happy to brainstorm or take a look at any of your materials and provide some feedback and thoughts. And so please keep this information. And again, thank you so much for joining us today and for being a part of Peer-to-Peer World for the last few hours. We're excited that you guys are finding it beneficial, and really appreciate all of your time and energy. I think there might be a couple. Okay, great info. All right. There you go. I've answered all the questions. I think that's it. You guys are free for the rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. So that about wraps up for this year's Peer-to-Peer World Virtual Conference. A big thank you to all of our outstanding speakers and to everyone who listened in today. And a very special thank you to all of our wonderful sponsors. And finally, just another reminder that the entire conference has been recorded and will be made available later today. So thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful day.
Thanks.